General Hospital spoilers for Friday, September 12th show Josslyn, Jax and S. Vaughn will battle a bedroom invader, while Nina Reeves embraces Britt Westbourne. Professor Henry Hank Dalton will also confess something to Emma Scorpio Drake. So let's discuss what happens next in Port Charles. Everyone at GH will be startled by Britt's unexpected reappearance. There will be a lot of tension and resentment from Britt's erstwhile rivals, but Nina will eventually run into her arms. In Friday's preview video, Britt exclaims, "Look how easy it is!" as if other PC residents should be as forgiving as Nina. Of course, Liesl Albrecht just fainted at the sight of her beloved Britta, so she'll have some questions when she wakes up. Liesl will be devastated by being kept in the dark, but she may also welcome Britt and celebrate her daughter's miraculous return home. Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer will spread the word about Britt's survival, and it won't be long before Rocco Falconeri and many other characters confront the Brit stunner. Elizabeth Baldwin will issue a warning to Lucas Jones. Liz may assume Britt's return will bring her old BFF back to town, therefore her words of caution may be addressed at Brad Cooper. Jason Morgan of the PCPD will keep Carly Spencer in the dark about Josslyn's WSB job for the time being. This will allow Jason to speak privately with Anna Devane, who will quickly justify her decision not to expose Josslyn's work to him. Anna will eventually ask Jason what he plans to do now that he knows everything. Jason will not relish the prospect of lying to Carly, especially if Jack Brennan is involved. It is unlikely that anything will compromise Dalton's participation in the project, thus this secret could be about hitting on Emma. Next, Josslyn and Vaughn will be in bed, celebrating the end of their adventure, when they hear a noise. There will be an intruder, thus Vaughn and Josslyn will draw their firearms instantly in response to a perceived threat. However, if it is just Brennan, the alert may be incorrect. According to GH spoilers, Brennan will demand answers about how the mission went so horribly wrong, as well as quiz his agents about this new personal development. Brennan does not want Vaughn and Josslyn to end their relationship, therefore he may encourage them to keep things professional from now on. Vaughn and Josslyn might have to start sneaking around if they want to stay together. Sonny Corinthos has several important meetings coming up. Brick will emerge and joke about moving like a ghost, so he'll be ready to help Sonny with whatever he needs. This could be tied to Sonny's efforts to gather more Gen Sidwell intelligence, so keep a lookout for his orders to Brick. At some point, Sonny will confront Carly about her visit to the police station. It will make Sonny wonder what Carly was up to with the commissioner, so Carly may admit to Anna that she threatened Drew Kane's life. Sonny may think it was too dangerous, but Carly will not be bothered because she did not go through with it and has an alibi thanks to Brennan. Anna is skeptical since she knows Brennan is capable of manipulating evidence, but she is now focusing on other suspects. Carly may warn Sonny that Drew is desperate to bring down Michael Corinthos for shooting him, so they will talk about how to protect their son. General Hospital spoilers reveal that Michael and Jacinda Bracken will continue to take advantage of each other, so stay tuned. Make CDL your go-to source for the latest General Hospital spoilers, updates, and news. General Hospital spoilers are now available for Friday, September 12th, 2025. Josslyn Jax is expected to be triggered in tomorrow's episode. Anna Devane questions Jason Morgan. Also, Britt Westbourne reunites with Nina Reeves. Continue reading to find out what happens in the upcoming episode of ABC's soap opera. Let's start with Jack Brennan's demand. Now that Vaughn and Josslyn Jax are safe, the WSB chief will demand explanations. The man will want to know what went wrong in Croatia and how their secrets were revealed. It was intended to be a straightforward mission, in which they would collect information, rather than participate in gunfights or hostage scenarios. Jack will also seek information about Joss and Vaughn's new connection. Although the two may try to keep things quiet, a sneak peek reveals someone busting through the door. This causes Joss and Vaughn to sit up in bed, pointing their guns. However, could Brennan have predicted this from the start? According to General Hospital spoilers for Friday, September 12th, Lulu Spencer and Dante Falconeri will break the news. Britt Westbourne came to the hospital, surprising everyone. Lulu is now forced to share two devastating realities to two of her children. The first will be to Charlotte Cassadine about her father, Valentine Cassadine. The following item will notify Rocco Falconeri that Britt is alive. Lulu seemed to have a lot to think about in both situations. I also imagine Liesl Obrecht being questioned about whether she was aware Britt was alive all along. On Friday, September 12, 2025, audiences will see Anna defend herself. Then, a preview film shows Jason informing Anna about his intentions. The commissioner asks what he wants to do now that he knows everything. Additionally, Elizabeth Liz Baldwin will try to warn Lucas Jones. Sonny Corinthos also pushes Carly Spencer on what she told Anna. The mob boss will then unveil his plan. Is this related to Brick's return? Britt and Nina will also reunite. Henry Hank Dalton reveals Emma Scorpio Drake a minor secret. Which plot are you most excited to see on Friday, September 12, 2025? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Continue watching ABC soap operas to see what happens next. The night was so peaceful that any sound in the house felt like a betrayal. Josslyn lay in bed breathing shallowly, her gaze fixed on the ceiling of the dimly lighted bedroom she shared with Vaughn. The antique brownstone they had moved into 6 months prior was charming, with creaky floors, large windows, and a history that clung to the walls like dew. But tonight the charm seemed like a weight. Vaughn was sleeping next her, his chest rising and falling with the steady beat of someone careless about the world. She envied it. Her mind couldn't stop racing after hearing the noises earlier. A faint shuffle like footsteps somewhere downstairs. She'd chalked it up to the house settling or the wind rattling the antique windows, but the fear remained, slithering into her thoughts like smoke. She checked the clock on the nightstand. 2:17 a.m. The red digits glittered accusingly, as if time itself were mocking her lack of sleep. She shifted, tightening the blanket and focusing on Vaughn's breathing, hoping it would lull her to sleep. But then it came again. A sharper sound like the scrape of a chair being dragged over the wooden floor beneath. Her heart lurched. She sat up, straining to listen. The house fell silent again, but with purpose, as if it was holding its breath. She nudges Vaughn, her hand trembling slightly. "Vaughn," she spoke gently, her voice barely audible. He did not move. She tried again, louder this time, but he just grumbled something incomprehensible before rolling over. The sound returned, clearer now. A faint thump, as if something heavy was being placed down. Her pulse quickened. She slid out of bed, her bare feet chilling to the floor, and crept to the bedroom door. The hallway stretched out before her, black and narrow, with shadows gathering where the moonlight couldn't reach. She paused, one hand on the door, the other clutching her phone. Should she call someone? What about the police? What if she heard a noise? She could already imagine the dispatcher's polite uncertainty. Instead, she opened the door and strolled into the hallway, her phone's flashlight casting a faint beam of light that appeared to falter in the darkness. The downstairs living room was a jumble of half-unpacked boxes and furniture that had been hurriedly assembled during the move. The beam of her flashlight flickered across the room, catching the edge of the couch, the sparkle of a glass on the coffee table, and the shape of the stairs to the basement. She froze. The basement door was ajar. She was positive she had closed it earlier that evening, as she always did, because the damp, musty odor that floated up from downstairs made her anxious. She tightened her grip on the phone. She wanted to yell out, to ask who was there, but her voice became lodged in her throat. Instead, she took a step closer, her heart pounding so hard that she was sure it would disclose her identity. The basement stairs creaked under her weight, with each step revealing her presence. At the bottom, the air was cooler and heavier, with a stronger mildew odor. Her beam flashed over the concrete floor, illuminating old shelves stacked with abandoned tools and garbage cans left behind by previous owners. Something moved in the far corner, a quick and determined shadow darting out of the way of the light. She gasped and lurched away, her phone almost slipping from her grip. "Who is there?" she eventually spoke, her voice crisp yet shaking. No response came, but the silence was different now, charged, like the instant before a storm hits. She backed toward the steps, her gaze fixed on the corner where the shadow had vanished. Her mind raced. Could it be an animal? A raccoon, perhaps, or a stray cat that had gotten in through a broken window. But the shadow was too large, too human. She reached the steps and began to climb. "Her legs, are you sure?" he inquired, immediately reaching for the baseball bat he kept beneath his bed. They moved together now, Vaughn leading with his bat lifted and Josslyn gripping her phone, the flashlight beam quivering. They searched every room, closet, and corner of the house but discovered nothing. No evidence of a break-in, no footprints, and no disturbed goods. The basement door was locked, exactly as she had left it. Vaughn tried to soothe her, saying it was just the house's idiosyncrasies or her imagination going wild, but his tone lacked sincerity. They stayed up the remainder of the night, waiting for sounds that never came. Nina sat on her couch in a small apartment packed with medical textbooks and empty coffee cups, her arms wrapped around Britt. Nina hugged her buddy tightly, almost desperate, as if she could tie her to the world with sheer willpower. Britt's face was pale, her eyes red with tears, and her hands trembled as she grasped a torn tissue. Britt's test results had come back that morning, and they were not good. Nina didn't know the details yet, but the gravity of the situation was enough. She'd known Britt since they were kids, sharing secrets in the back of a school bus, and now they were confronting something neither of them could avoid. "I don't know what to do," Britt said quietly, her voice barely audible. Nina tightened her grip, her throat tight from emotion. "You don't have to know right now," she replied softly. "We'll figure it out together." But the words seemed hollow, a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Britt drew back slightly, her gaze seeking Nina's face for something. Hope, perhaps, or reassurance that everything was a mistake. Nina wanted to give her that, but all she could offer was her presence. A solid hand to grasp while the world shifted. They remained there for a long time, the calm between them punctuated by the hum of the city outside. Car horns, distant sirens, the deep rumbling of a delivery truck. Nina's thoughts turned not to the future, but to the past, to the summers they'd spent sneaking into movies or sleeping on the roof of Britt's parents' house, counting stars and forming unbreakable plans. Those memories seemed like a different lifetime now, frail and remote. She wanted to add something meaningful to lighten the mood of the situation, but nothing came to her. Instead, she grabbed the remote and turned on the television, letting the monotonous banter of a sitcom fill the room. Britt did not resist, instead leaning into her, and for a while they pretended the world was not collapsing. Later, after Britt had fallen asleep on the couch, Nina went into the kitchen to make tea. Her phone buzzed on the counter, indicating a text from Dalton, a friend from her previous work at the law company. "We need to talk. I have something you'll want to hear." She scowled as her thumb hovered over the screen. Dalton wasn't the kind to text unexpectedly, especially at this hour. She texted a short response. "Can it wait? I'm with Britt right now." His response was nearly immediate. "It's about her. Meet me tomorrow. Noon at the diner on 4th. Her stomach twisted. Dalton had an uncanny ability to unearth knowledge that might either change or ruin everything. She looked back at Britt, who was snuggled up under a blanket, and felt a sense of fear. Whatever Dalton had, it was not going to be easy. The diner smelled like grease and coffee, and the air felt fried. Nina moved into the booth across from Dalton, her hands securely gripped in her lap. He looked the same as always, sharp eyes, a leather jacket that had seen better days, and a smirk that suggested he knew more than he admitted. "You look like hell," he observed as a greeting, sliding a menu across the table. She ignored it. "What is this about Britt?" she questioned quietly, cutting through the clatter of dishes and the buzz of conversation around them. Dalton leaned back, his fingers tapping on the table. "I've got a deal for you," he said, his tone calm and measured, as if he were making a chess play. "But it isn't straightforward," Nina murmured, her gaze narrowing. She'd worked with Dalton long enough to understand that his deals came with long, tangled links. "Spit it out," she insisted, her patience dwindling. He checked to make sure no one was listening before leaning in. "I know a guy who works in biotechnology. He has access to several experimental treatments that aren't currently on the market. This could be beneficial to Britt. But it isn't inexpensive, and it's not entirely legal." Nina's nostrils tightened. She'd heard stories about black market drugs and trials that broke the law, but she never imagined herself sitting across from someone offering her a taste of that world. "What is the catch?" she queried, knowing there was always a catch with Dalton. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "He needs someone to discreetly relocate certain documents. If you do, he'll involve Britt in the trial. No questions asked." Nina's mind raced. She wasn't naive. She knew what discreetly meant. Smuggling maybe, or worse. But Britt's face flashed in her mind, pale and delicate, and she felt her resolve weaken. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice strong despite the agony inside her. Dalton started speaking, explaining the specifics, dates, locations, and hazards. The records were sensitive and related to a competitor company, and transferring them would force her to breach boundaries she had never crossed before. However, the treatment represented a true opportunity for Britt. Nina listened intently, her heart beating as the din of the dining room faded away. She didn't notice the person in the corner booth watching her, their face half disguised by a newspaper. The same figure that had been outside her apartment the night before disappeared into the shadows. Back in the brownstone, Josslyn couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching her. She'd spent the day checking locks, closing curtains, and even exploring the basement in the bright morning light. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the fear lingered like a splinter in her thoughts. Vaughn had gone to work, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the house's suffocating silence. She attempted to distract herself by performing chores and unloading boxes, but every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the hum of the refrigerator, made her jump. By midday she'd had enough. She called a locksmith, then a security company, and scheduled an appointment for a full alarm system. But when she made the calls, she discovered it wasn't just about the loudness. It was the feeling that something or someone was waiting. She pondered telling Vaughn everything about the shadow in the basement, but she didn't want to worry him any further than she already had. Instead, she texted Nina, asking if she could come over. Nina's response was quick but ambiguous. "Busy today but soon. You okay?" Josslyn had no idea how to respond to that, so she didn't. That night, Vaughn arrived home late, his face exhausted from a long day. They ate dinner in near silence, the weight of the previous night hanging over them. Josslyn eventually spoke out while they sat on the couch. "I'm scared," she murmured softly. Vaughn reached for her hand, and his touch was warm and firm. "We'll figure it out," he responded. "Perhaps it's nothing. Maybe it's just the house." But his eyes turned to the basement door, and she knew he didn't believe her any more than she did. Nina didn't sleep after meeting Dalton. She lay awake staring at the ceiling of her apartment, the details of his deal swirling through her head. It was a risk, her freedom, possibly her life, for the chance to save Britt. She had pondered calling her and telling her everything, but what would happen? Britt didn't need more weight on her shoulders. By daybreak, Nina had made her decision. She texted Dalton, "I'm in. Please tell me what to do next." The instructions arrived quickly. Meet with his contact, drop-off location, and deadline. She felt as if she were entering the life of someone braver or more daring than herself. But every time she paused, she noticed Britt's look and heard her voice crack. That was enough to keep her going. She had no idea that across town, Josslyn was staring at a security camera feed. Her breath caught as she witnessed a person creep through the backyard too quickly to see. She had no notion the shadow in her basement was not random or coincidental. And she had no clue that the agreement she just agreed to would lead her into a web that extended well beyond her apartment, city, and life. A web that linked her to Josslyn and Vaughn in ways neither of them could foresee. Josslyn recalls the subsequent days as a blur. The security business installed cameras and motion sensors, but the footage yielded no clear results. Only fleeting shadows and smudges that could represent anything. She started sleeping with a knife under her pillow, something she didn't tell Vaughn about. He was trying to keep things normal by making jokes about their haunted house, but she could see the strain in his eyes. They were both fake and it was wearing them out. Josslyn couldn't sleep one night, so she went to the living room and opened her laptop, seeking for anything that could explain the noises and shadows. She came across forums about home invasions, articles about old houses with hidden rooms, and even accounts of squatters living in basement. None of it fit, but it heightened her concern. She became concerned about the previous owners and why they had left so much behind. She delved deeper and found a name. Margaret Heller, the last person to reside here before them. A quick search showed up an obituary. Margaret died in her home alone 2 years ago. The cause was listed as natural, however the details were vague. Josslyn's stomach churned. She turned off her laptop and sat in the dark, listening to the house breathe around her. The basement door was secured, and the cameras were activated, but it didn't seem like enough. She didn't hear the faint click of the rear door being opened or see the figure vanish into the night. But she felt it, the same weight she felt the first night, the feeling that something was approaching and getting closer. Nina met Dalton's contact at a parking garage that appeared to be designed for awful judgments. The man was elderly and unassuming, with a briefcase and an excessively extended handshake. He handed her a flash drive and instructions to deliver it to a location across town with no inquiries or detours.